been delegated investigative responsibilities of the kidnap, torture, and murder of Special Agent Camarena. He says, how would you like to run that case? I said, I'd be honored to run that case. I was briefed in Washington, and then I was shipped in charge of the Mazatlan, Sinaloa DEA office, which is the most dangerous office in all of Mexico. Once they agreed to cooperate, then they would take you into their organization. And they would introduce me as their cousin or a friend of whatever, and a drug dealer or whatever. They would lie for us. And then we'd cut him out. I was ex-military, so I knew how to use M60s, M79 grenade launchers, and all that other stuff. I was involved in numerous shootouts. They killed some of my men, shot up some of my men, and I killed some of their men. So it was understood that we had a war going on between each other. So therefore, when you're undercover, it's a different story. That's the way you build into the organization. And actually, you become almost one of them. I got to be a crazy man to say that the CIA was involved in Kiki's murder. I got to be nuts to say that and just make it up. And if I made it up and I induced anybody to lie, that is subornation of perjury. Why am I not in jail?
Today's show is sponsored by the law offices of Armand Gregorian. If you're injured in a car accident and need proper guidance and representation, reach out to the law offices of Armand Gregorian, 1-818-404-0333. Also, today's show is brought to you by the Glen Arden Club. If you're interested in networking, cigars, scotch, and a great environment, reach out to us. We'll connect you to the boys at the Glen Arden, and you'll become a member here. Smoke with the WiseNuts, smoke with a great network, and build your network. Happy Monday, everybody. TGIM.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, I would think, right?
It is 5 o'clock somewhere. It is 5 o'clock somewhere. So we want to thank everybody for taking time out of your Mondays to join us. We have sitting to our right, former DEA agent Hector Berrellez. We want to thank you for taking time out of your Monday to be with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Probably one of the most decorated DEA agents, having received the Attorney General's Award for Heroism given to him at the White House. Also, he's the recipient of the Federal Bar's Medal of Valor. Now, just to put it into perspective, this is equivalent to somebody in the military receiving the Medal of Honor. And this gentleman decided to take time out of his day to join the WiseNuts and tell some very, very interesting stories, which may shock a lot of you as well. And we want to start off with Kiki Camarena and how you landed the investigation of his murder.
Well, to begin with, I met Kiki Camarena in the early 80s when he was assigned to the Fresno office. Before he was transferred to Guadalajara. We worked a couple of cases together. He would bring cases down from Fresno. I was stationed at the LA division at the time. And that's how I got to meet him. He was later transferred, like I said, in the mid 80s to Guadalajara. And he inflicted serious, basically, damage to the Guadalajara cartel, which was at the time the major cartel. I was assigned to the LA division, as I stated before. And I needed some good informants to be able to draw up an affidavit to do a wiretap operation on a major heroin distributing organization out of Indio, California. So I was talking to Kiki on and off because he was the one that provided me with two great informants that I could take before a U.S. magistrate to get the warrant to be able to go up on the wiretap that I needed. So I was talking to Kiki back and forth. And one morning, I was at the gym working out, and I see a flash on the news that Kiki had been kidnapped, that he'd been taken. And right away, I knew they had to be the cartel guys that basically kidnapped him, and we couldn't find him. Of course, we later found out that he was kidnapped, and he was tortured and interrogated and beaten to death. So at the time, like I said, I was investigating the wiretap operation, so I didn't go right away to Mexico. But later, a year or two later, we knew the suspects. We knew it was the Guadalajara cartel guys, Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, the leader of the Guadalajara cartel, Miguel Felix Gallardo, another one of the leaders, Juan Ramon Mata Ballesteros, and also the Caro Quintero. They were the heads of the Guadalajara organization back then. So they sent me to Mexico with orders to arrest these guys, and if I couldn't arrest them, then try to eliminate them. And we know what the word eliminate means. So I said, 10-4, got it. I got the message. So I was briefing Washington, and then I was shipped in charge of the Mazatlan, Sinaloa DEA office, which is the most dangerous office in all of Mexico because all of the cartel guys that I just mentioned, Felix Gallardo, Caro Quintero, Fonseca, they're all from Sinaloa, even though at the time they were operating out of Guadalajara. And I did. I went after them. And I was involved in numerous shootouts. They killed some of my men, shot up some of my men, and I killed some of their men. So it was understood that we had a war going on between each other. As a matter of fact, I was involved in the longest shootout in the history of the DEA, a shootout that lasted almost 2 hours against these cartel members. And that's why I received the U.S. Attorney's Award for heroism. Why? Because during the shootout, I had numerous mixed feds that were shot up bad, that were wounded, and I was able to get him out, even though the gunfire was still going on. Took him out, tried to get him to a hospital where they could be treated. I mean, they were bleeding bad. And myself and another DEA agent, they were driving the wounded out of the shootout. We basically didn't know the area, so we didn't know where the hospital was. So I told the Jim White, another DEA agent, just keep driving. We had the wounded in the back of an SUV. Just keep driving, I said, and we'll figure out where we're going. And I see a cab coming from the opposite direction. So I said, stop. That cab driver can lead us to the hospital. So I got out with my AK-47, not realizing that I was full of blood because I had carried these wounded into the vehicle.
Jeez.
And I stopped the taxi cab, and I said, listen, I'm a federal agent, Mexican federal agent. I didn't tell him I was DEA. And I said, you got to take these guys to the hospital. I got wounded guys in that car. So go with him and take him to the hospital and let me have the keys to your cab. And the driver says to me, what are you doing with my cab? I said, I'm going to borrow it. You would go with that other agent there, take him to the hospital, and I will get your cab back to you. I'm just going to borrow it. And he had no choice because I had a gunpoint on him. I had my AK-47 on him. So he said, okay, I'll do it. So he took off. By the way, he urinated all over himself because he saw me. I must have looked horrible, full of blood and carrying a rifle and everything.
Wow.
So he took off with the other agent, with the wounded, and I got in his cab and I went back to the shootout.
This is the shootout that took place at the cornfield.
Yes, this is a notorious shootout that happened at a cornfield. So I go back over there, and of course the gun battle's still going on. And my agents and mixed feds are fighting with the cartel guys. When I pulled up, it was eerie silent because the crooks were thinking, "Who's in the cab?" And my guys are thinking, "What's the cab doing pulling in here?" So I get out of the cab and I tell the guys it's me, and I fire a volley at the bad guys, and then they all shoot at me, and I hit behind the engine of the outside of the car by the engine because I knew the bullets were coming through and through, so that I wouldn't get shot. But they destroyed. I mean, they made Swiss cheese out of the cab. And of course, we continued to shoot out until finally my guy that had taken the wounded called Mexico City, and they sent some military officers out there to rescue us because these guys were armed to the teeth, and they were really putting up a fight. We didn't know that there was 20 tons of marijuana and a ton of cocaine at that ranch.
So just to paint a perspective and a picture, I mean, when they say, okay, listen, we're shipping you to Mexico to go eliminate or arrest these 4 cartel heads, how many men are they sending you with?
Well, here's the thing: they don't send you with a lot of men because the only agents that were at the office when I got there was like 5 agents there, and it was me and just 5 agents.
And you're supposed to take on the cartel with 5
I'm
agents?
supposed to recruit supposedly cops and military guys to work with me to go after the cartel guys, Mexican guys, which are, by the way, most of them are on the take to the cartels anyway. So it was a very hard job. But I said, okay, I speak Spanish and I blend well, and I think I can do it. I can try to get some of these guys. And that load that I'm talking about, that was Carlos Quintero's load, one of his loads, okay, of drugs that he had.
The 20,000.
What I mean by ship, yeah. brought it in by ship. So that was one of the major things that I did when I was down there, and then we killed numerous traffickers there, of course. Not to get into all the details of the shootout, but that's another full story. But then I was involved in another shootout where we went after Miguel Felix Gallardo, who everybody knows who he is. He's a major cartel guy. He was the biggest cocaine distributor in Mexico at the time. And again, we got involved in another major shootout there, and we ended up killing some of his guys, and ended up killing his main charge of security. They called him Culichi. He was a real serial killer. So we ended up killing him, and ended up killing his uncle in the shootout. Of course, we didn't arrest the major guys, but we did kill some of their people. Later, I was identified as being the one that attacked Felix Gallardo, and Felix Gallardo then decides he's going to kill me. So they put a warrant out for my arrest, and
Did Gallardo know at the time you were a DEA agent or no?
Yeah, they knew I was DEA. Of course, the same people that were working with me are working for them too. So
because there's also DFS, right?
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
The DFS, who they are.
So what I wanted to ask was this: or initially, when you went into Mexico, were you sent undercover or were you sent as a DEA?
No, I was not sent undercover. I had been in Mexico in and out undercover. I was sent as in charge of the U.S. consulate.
So they sent you to they sent you into the wolves. They sent you to the wolves, knowing that, hey, listen, you're not undercover. Go recruit your own army, and all we want you to do is take these 4 guys out, either arrest them or eliminate them.
Those were the orders, yes, sir.
Now, how do you train for a shootout like that? I mean,
well, you're trained at how to use all these weapons, and of course I was ex-military, so I knew how to use M60s, M79 grenade launchers, and all that other stuff because I was trained for the Vietnam War. So I had a lot of the training already, and then the DEA, of course, at the academy, they introduce a lot of these weapons to you, and you're trained on how to use these weapons. And of course, they show you how to basically repel and attack and the different tactics that you use and stuff like that. But remember, the academy is only like 2 months, so you can't get a lot of training in that time. So that's basically all the training we have. That's why the DEA, back when I was there, would recruit out of the military and would recruit out of police department. So most of us that came, like myself, I had already been in the military and had been a former cop. So I had a lot of training when I went into the DEA. Plus, back then, the DEA had a major push for minorities. And you hired a lot of Iranians, Japanese, Mexicans, Colombians, because they knew that what we were up against, Anglos couldn't really do it. How are you going to be an Anglo guy and penetrate a Mexican cartel? There's no way. They wouldn't even talk to you. So they hire people like me that can go undercover, that can speak the language, have the background, be able to carry false credentials. Like when I traveled to Colombia, I had Mexican credentials. So when I went into Colombia, I had Mexican passport, Mexican driver's license, all Mexican credentials. So when I was undercover, like in Colombia, I was a Mexican. So I would identify my Colombians or whoever as a Mexican.
You were able to blend in.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the thing. When you're undercover now, you're not running an office or anything out of a consulate or an embassy. You don't even go to the DA office. You don't show up because you're meeting crooks. And the crooks are obviously going to check you out and do surveillance on you. So if you're going to the embassy or the DA office, by the way, they're going to know this guy's a DEA agent. Why is he doing going to the U.S. embassy and stuff into the DEA office? So therefore, when you're undercover, it's a different story. You carry false credentials. You can pose as being a Mexican. I couldn't pose as a Colombian because of the way they speak Spanish. It's a different dialect.
Yeah.
So I speak Spanish like a Mexican. So I would say I'm from Mexico. And I practiced speaking good Spanish so that I could pass as a Mexican. And it worked very well because it was also undercover here into cartel guys in the United States. And they would ask me, are you a cop? I said, man, I don't even speak English. I don't have green papers. Can you help me get papers? Maybe I'll join the department then. I won't need to be doing this shit. I'll become a cop. Yeah. And they laughed. I said, are you kidding me? I'm not even here legally. And you're accusing me of being a federal agent?
Because you were born in Arizona, correct?
That's correct.
And the dialect of Spanish that you spoke in the States was a little bit different than it is in Mexico.
Correct.
So you were able to teach yourself how the Mexicans were to speak Spanish in order to blend in with not the cartel, but to play the undercover role with the DEA.
Absolutely. And you would had informants that trained you. You would say, how do I say this? Don't use the word heroina, which is heroin. That's cop talk, chiva, and all the slangs and all the street talk.
Ah,
And not only that, don't dress like this. Put some cowboy boots on. Throw a cowboy hat on. I'm a cowboy naturally anyway because I have horses and I'm a cowboy, and that's the way the cartel guys dress. So that's kind of Western. They like the Western look.
mhm.
So the dress I already had, and the only thing that I need to learn is how they spoke and how they acted, and to always be fearless. Don't ever show a little bit of fear because they'll take advantage of you or they'll rob you. They'll rip you off. You have to act really, really like a badass. And my informants would tell them, don't show any weakness. And so I learned from informants. So, for instance, when I was undercover in L.A., and it was I was training an FBI agent, as a matter of fact, I'll never forget it. The FBI said, train this guy how to work drugs undercover. And he was a Mexican FBI agent. I said, okay, I'll take him under my wing and I'll show him how to do it. So we go into the Macarena bar here in East LA, and we're meeting the owner, who is a cocaine seller, and we're trying to buy some cocaine from him. And so we go to the bar with the informant, and of course at the door they have bouncers. And the bouncer starts trying to, this is part of the undercover role. So you see how we acted. He's trying to pat me down and I said, get your goddamn hands off of me. Why are you touching me like this? You queer or something? He said, no, I'm a bouncer here. I'm checking for guns. I said, I have a gun, bitch. Here's my gun. What are you going to do now? Are you going to take my fucking gun away from me? Are you kidding me? Oh, no, sir. I said, I'm here to talk to the owner and get your hands off of me because I'll blow your hand off, dude. Just get away from me. That's how you had to act. And I learned that from being with the informants. They said, that's the way you got to act. And so I come in and I tell the bartender, hey, I'm looking for El Chavo here, and he owns this joint, and I'm supposed to meet him here. He says, he's not here right now. He says, I said, who am I say? I'll call him. He'll come over. Who am I say is here? And I just tell him it's Manny. He'll know who I am. He was expecting me. But that's the way you had to act. And that's the way you couldn't show any fear. It's like when you go to prison, you can't show any fear in there. I mean, they'll rape you. I mean, you gotta fight.
But how do you develop that though? Because especially if you're dealing with the cartel, I mean, these guys can take you and torture you, dismember you. How does that not affect you as far as thinking, okay, I got to not show any fear. I got to stand up to him. How do you develop that though?
You have to just develop it, and you know right away because you instill fear in them, and they know you're carrying a gun, and they know that you'll fight. They'll know that you'll shoot them. In other words, it's not a game. It's a very serious type of situation with when you're dealing with those kind of people. They'll kill you, and you'll kill them.
Jeez.
And so you got to be very serious. You have to be very, very macho, very aggressive. And I learned that from my informants, and they would tell me, "Don't show weakness." And you got the money. You're in charge. They want to sell your stuff. You put it on your terms. Don't let them take you where they want to because they'll rip you off. And if they see you a little weak, they'll say, "Hey, this guy's just a wimp. We won't bring him the heroin. We'll bring the heroin and rob him anyway, and don't give him the heroin. They'll rip you off." So you have to show them that you're ready right there to do war and die. And that's the way I acted.
How
Like a
did
real
you
badass.
how did you develop the trust with your informants? Because how do you know these guys are not inside cartel guys pretending to be informants? How did you develop that relationship?
First of
with
all,
them?
most of them we'd arrested. We knew they were real. We knew they were real drug dealers. And we would bring him in, arrest him, and bring him in and say, listen, you're looking at 35 years. I don't have to arrest you. I want to arrest you anyway, but I don't have to charge you. You make me cases, and I won't charge you. But you're looking at doing 35 to whatever 40 years right now for the drugs you just delivered to me. Will you work with me? And remember, the whole government knows that you're going to inform it. So if you turn on me, we'll find you wherever you go, and we're going to arrest you and charge you with murder of a federal agent. So these guys are afraid to turn us in. Once they agree to cooperate, then they would take you into their organization. And they would introduce me as their cousin or a friend of whatever, and a drug dealer or whatever. They would lie for us. And then we'd cut him out. As soon as we started getting to be friendly or admitted by the cartel members, we would cut him out. Meaning that I've got direct contact with the cartel guys, because why? I'm buying drugs from them, and you're not arresting them. It's called buy walks. You buy and you walk. You let them have the money, and then they believe you're a real cartel guy because you're buying. You're actually buying the drugs from them, even though you're turning them in as evidence, but you're spending the money. And after a while, they don't want your informant anymore. They want to do directly with you because you tell the informant, tell them you want you want part of the money, and they want to cut him out too because they want to keep most of the money. It's all greed. So then they say, hey, we don't need Pedro anymore. I'll deal directly with you. That's fine. We'll do direct. We don't. I don't need him either. And it's good because then you're cutting the informant out. Now you're directly buying drugs from them. You're developing their trust, and you're going to what's called a long-term undercover operation. After a while, you're saying, "Hey, I want to go to Mexico. I want to meet your supplies. I want bigger supplies. I want now hundreds of pounds." And that's the way you build into the organization. And actually, you become almost one of them. I remember when I was a young agent, and I wanted to be trained, and I wanted to be a very good undercover agent. And there was an old guy that his name was Bill Caton. He's gone now. Um, he's with God. But anyway, he was an old guy. Nobody liked to work with him. But he had worked organized crime. He had worked the alcohol, tobacco when alcohol was illegal. He was that old, and he
During
was
the
still on the
Prohibition.
job. And so nobody wanted to ride with him because he was kind of nasty. He chewed a lot of tobacco and he kind of stunk. And nobody wanted to go surveil this guy. But I wanted to learn from him because I wanted to be a good undercover agent. And one day we were on surveillance on the Mexican border, and I said, Bill, I said, I want to be a good undercover agent. You were one of the best. Tell me, what does it take to be? How do I become a great undercover agent? And he was chewing tobacco, and he says, you know what, Hector? He says, you know what? What's a German Shepherd? I said, a German Shepherd? It's a dog. No, he's not. A German Shepherd is a domesticated wolf. Okay, what does it have to do with what I'm asking you? He said, okay, so you're a German Shepherd, you're a domesticated wolf, and now you're going to run with the real wolves.
Mm.
If the real wolves suspect that you're a German Shepherd, they're going to kill you. So when you're running with the wolves, you do what the wolves do. Remember, because the agency can't protect you. So you got to protect yourself. So I have to do what the wolves do. You have to because they'll devour you. They'll smell you out. So you're trying to tell me that I might have to commit crimes? You might have to save your life. I said, whoa. I never thought about it like that. If you want to be a real undercover agent, you got to turn yourself into a wolf. When you're running with them, you're a wolf. You're no longer a German Shepherd. You got it? That's all I'm going to tell you. I can't make it any clearer to you, and I'm not going to tell you what I had to do and what I did when I was undercover. And I said, wow, I thought about it for a long time, and I thought, so I have to kill somebody, then I might have to kill him to save my own skin. So I might have to maybe smoke dope or stuff like that. I don't want to do that. But if it means me dying, I got to do what I got to do to stay alive because nobody's there with me but me and the wolves. The other German shepherds are not around to help me. So that's what it's like being an undercover agent. And I've talked to other undercover agents, Dr. Joe Pistone, Donnie Brasco guy. I asked him, I said, you must have really had to do a lot of stuff. And he says, yeah, you do. And it's kind of hard when you do a long-term undercover operation to come back to reality again because you feel like you're still a wolf. So sometimes you have problems with your own wife or whatever because wait a minute, you're fearless.
You can't shoot them.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's a very complicated thing that I'm talking about here. So let's go back to Camarena. So Camarena is taken, and I'm not there now, and I'm trying to target some of these guys that killed Camarena. And finally, they put a war. Like I said, they tried to kill me, and they almost kidnapped my family, who I had in Mexico at the time with me. They almost kidnapped my daughter and my wife. And at that point, the DEA evacuated me. They said, "Hey, you can't be in Mexico anymore. They know all about you. You've been targeted. We have to get you out." So I was evacuated out of Mexico back to the U.S. Upon being evacuated back from Mexico to the U.S., I get a call from Washington that the director of the DEA wants to see me, and he would like to talk to me on the phone. Not see me, need to talk to me on the phone
This
first.
is what year? Because Camarena was murdered in 85,
This is 88.
88. So
Right.
3
So
years
3
later.
years later.
Okay.
So the administrator of the DEA basically requested I call him. So I called him. I had been evacuated into Arizona, Phoenix, and I called him from the Phoenix DEA office. And basically, he said, "Listen, Hector," he says, "I know you're very aggressive, and you've done a great job down there, and they're out to kill you. So we have to reassign you." He said, "And I would like to reassign you to run the task force, which was a task force which had been delegated investigative responsibilities of the kidnap, torture, and murder of Special Agent Camarena." He says, "How would you like to run that case?" I said, "I'd be honored to run that case." So he said, "Okay, enjoy another month of vacation, get yourself settled down, and report to the Los Angeles office. When you're there, call me because I'm gonna make you head of that task force." And I said, "Okay." So I did, and I called him, and during the phone call, he says, "Listen, I don't want to talk to you on the phone. I want you to fly in and meet with me here in Washington, D.C." I flew in, and we sat down, and he asked me, he says, "Hector," he says, "can you recruit witnesses that were there? You know, we've been investigating Al Kiki's murder for 3 or 4 years now, and we still don't have anybody that can walk us through that was at the scene. They can tell us who interrogated him, what he was asked, everything. We don't have a witness like that. Can you do that?" And I said, "I think so." He says, "What do you need to do that?" I said, "I need immigration." He said, "Immigration? Why immigration?" I said, "Because if I recruit one witness that that was there, he's not going to want to come and testify and tell us anything. Because if we bring him in, they're going to kill his whole family down there. That's the way it works. So if I recruit a witness, I have to be able to bring his brothers, his cousins, his sons, his daughters, grandfathers, everybody, the whole family. We can't leave him because the cartels will kill him." He said, "I think I can get immigration to do that." And I said, "Well, that's what I'm going to need." And then he says to me, "Hector," he says, "I says, I know you've been doing a lot of a lot of work also with the CIA. I don't need to know what you doing, what you did with them because you can't tell me anyway." But he said, "Could you help us perform an extraterritorial rendition?" And I said, "Extraterritorial rendition? What's that?" I'm not a lawyer. I said, "You're talking legal terms
Yeah, I was
here."
about to ask you, what the hell does that mean?
So I said, "What is that?" He said, "A kidnapping." "Oh, yeah." I said, "What do you want to kidnap?" "Well, first of all, what would it cost to kidnap somebody from Mexico?" And I said, "Well, it all depends who you want me to kidnap. If you want to kidnap the president, it's going to be expensive." I said, "But tell me who you want to kidnap, and I can tell you what it would cost." I mean, it's just like, how do you buy a pair of boots? I mean, if you don't describe the boots to me, I mean, I don't know what it's going to cost. He said, "Well," he says, "I'd like you to kidnap the doctor that we understand injected drugs into Camarena when he was being interrogated, Dr. Humberto Alvarez Machine. Can you have him kidnapped so we can try him for murder here?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "What would that run?" "I can do that for about 250,000.
How'd you come up with that figure, 250,000?
Yeah, I was about to.
I just came up with it because I figured I could pay a comandante that I knew or a general that I knew that kind of money that would do it for that kind of money.
Mm.
Because I knew that they worked for the cartels. They'll work for anybody. They're after money. I mean, if I offer money to kill somebody, they'll kill somebody, like the cartels do. That's the way it works in Mexico. So I said, "I think 250,000 I can do it for." He says, "Well, how are you going to do it?" I said, "I'm not going to do it. I'm going to hire a general or a commandante or somebody and pay him off. And they'll bring anybody I want." But this guy, he's a nobody. He's just a doctor. Says, "We can kidnap him easy." "How long will it take you?" Give him a couple of weeks, a month. He said, "That fast?" And I said, "Yes, I know the people. I've worked in Mexico. I have friends that are commandantes and generals and stuff like that, and I know they work for both sides. They tell me they work for both sides. They're into making money." He said, "Okay, we'll get you the money. You do it." And I did. I kidnapped him. I had him kidnapped. And so then I had the reputation of doing that. And of course, once we got him over here, it was all over the news that this doctor had been arrested and had been kidnapped by, and this is where the agency threw me under the bus initially. Frank Schultz, the PIO officer, press information officer for the DEA at the time, when asked about this kidnapping, said that the doctor had been kidnapped by a rogue renegade agent, Hector Berrellez, without headquarters knowledge or authorization.
What?
That's what they said. You go back and look at the Washington Post back then, it's right there. And so that was all over the news. And then, of course, the president of Mexico, they get a warrant for my arrest for kidnapping in Mexico, and they come ask for my extradition over here. So I had a warrant in Mexico for kidnapping that doctor. For 20 years, I had that warrant for my arrest. Okay? So then I had to of course, and now I'm this person, and I'm all over the news as a kidnapper and this and that, and a bad guy. And so then I'm in charge of the Camarena case.
But what happens? Sorry, going back. What happens to the doctor?
Well, he's being held here to be tried, and it went before the U.S. Supreme Court and everything else. Finally, he got released, and that's another story. We'll get into that how he got released. But anyway, so I'm in charge of the Camarena case, and this is all over the news, and I'm all over the news that I kidnapped this guy, which I did under orders of the DEA, even though the DEA was denying it. And so it put me in charge of the Camarena case, and I'm briefed on the Camarena case. And they say, well, listen, Hector, Camarena was kidnapped and killed because the traffickers were mad at Camarena because he had basically seized the Buffalo marijuana fields, which they seized over 10,000 tons of marijuana belonging to Rafael Carlos Quintero and Ernesto Fonseca. And so they were pissed off, and DFS agents were involved in picking up Kiki Camarena. I said, what? He said, DFS agents were involved in picking up Kiki Camarena. Director of Federal Security Agents? I said, yes. And I knew, working in Mexico and having done some operations with our CIA, that the DFS worked under the direction of our CIA. This is strange.
Wasn't DFS created by the CIA?
They were created by the CIA. DFS, Director of Federal Security in Mexico. They were trained here in Langley, these guys. CIA, Mexican CIA guys. So anyway, so I knew all of that because thank God I had worked in Mexico. So, and I knew. So then I decided, okay, I need to recruit DFS agents as informants inside the DFS to basically get information on what DFS agents were involved in the actual kidnapping of Camarena. So I knew that DFS agents were involved in kidnapping Camarena. So I needed to basically recruit DFS agents to inform on those that had been involved in Kiki's murder or Kiki's kidnapping, excuse me. And so I talked to some of my sources, and they said, there's a Anglo guy, a white guy that works for the DFS. So what? Yes, there's a white guy that works for the DFS. He's a electronics expert. He sets up the repeaters and radio communications for the DFS. And I said, okay, do you know him? I asked my source and said, yeah, I know him. Would you travel to Mexico and get that white guy, that Anglo guy on the phone with me? I said, but what's his name? He says, I don't know what his name is, but they call him Torre Blanca, which is White Tower. I said, why do they call him White Tower? Because he's a real tall gringo, white guy, almost 7 foot tall, and he's an electronics expert. He does repeaters. So they call him Torre Blanca, which is White Tower in English. I says, okay, go to Guadalajara and put that guy on the phone with me. I want to talk to him. So he does that, and he goes over there, and he calls me, and he says, hey, I got Torre Blanca on the line. He will talk to you. So I come on the line, and in English, I said, what is your name? He says, I'm Larry Harrison. And I said, okay, that's your real name? He says, yes, well, I'm Hector Berrellez. He said, I know who you are. He said, you've been all over the news. You're the kidnapper. You're the one that kidnapped that doctor. And I said, yes, I am. And I need to talk to you. He said, what do you want to talk to me? I said, because you work for the DFS. And I know DFS agents were involved in Kiki's kidnapping. I need to talk to you. He said, you don't even know what you're involved in. You're not going to talk to me. I don't want to talk to you. And he hung up on me. So I called back and got my sources. Get that white guy on the line again. When I'm talking in English, like I'm talking to you right now. And he says, I told you, dude, I don't want to talk to you. You don't know what you're involved in. I said, you know what? You know who I am? Yeah, you're the guy that kidnapped. I said, I'm going to kidnap your white ass. You're right. I'm the guy that does the kidnapping. That's who you're talking to, me. And either you cooperate with me or I'm going to kidnap your ass and you're going to cooperate anyway. So he said, you're not going to kidnap me. And I said, you watch. And I hung up on him. So I figured he wasn't going to call me back. 3 days later, he calls me back. And he says, hey, Hector, he says, I do want to talk to you. He says, you will kidnap me, won't you? And I said, I'm going to kidnap you. You're coming up here one way or another, dude. You work for the DFS, and you're gonna help me with this investigation.
Poor guy hasn't slept for 3 days.
Right. He's worried that I'm going to kidnap him.
Imagine dating Hector. He
what?
just kidnaps you.
And guess what? I was going to kidnap him. All right. I was going to have him kidnapped.
I'm just trying to understand why Kiki's kidnapping is so. Why the DEA is so tied up on it. What's the reason behind it? Why are they so hooked on this kidnapping?
Because we have agents all over the world, and if DEA didn't make big hay out of this thing, they would kidnap and kill more other agents. So we had to show the world that if you take a DEA agent, the DEA will never forget. And I'm going to tell you what Pablo Escobar remind me about what he said about this, because later Pablo Escobar was tape recorded saying, kill all the judges, kill all the federal prosecutors, kill all the federal agents, but don't touch DEA, because DEA will come after you. Look at the way they've gone after the Mexicans over Kiki's murder. That was tape recorded.
Really? By Escobar?
For that reason, that's because we wanted to keep people from touching us. But where was I? So anyway, so Larry calls me back and he says, okay, Torreblanca calls me back, my tower. Okay, I will talk to you under one condition. And I said, what's that? That you fly me into the States and nobody knows I'm coming in. Nobody must know. You must promise me that. I said, okay, nobody will know. I'll send a Lear jet, one of the DEA guys, to pick you up in a Lear jet and bring you in. I brought him in. And here in LA, in West Covina at a hotel, I met with him. And I said, okay, you work for the DFS. I want you to tell me who in the DFS was involved in kidnapping Kiki Camarena. He said, number one, Hector, he says, you don't know what you're involved in. We killed Camarena. I said, what? What do you mean, we killed Camarena? I said, I didn't kill Camarena. Maybe you did. He said, duh, our government killed Camarena. He said, don't you know where I work? You work for the DFS. No, I don't. Do you think, put your thinking hat on, dude, that any American can just walk in and get a job in Mexico's CIA, Mexico's major intelligence agency? I'm a CIA operative. I was assigned to work with the Mexicans. What? Yes. And do you think that the DFS is going to pick up Kiki without our CIA knowing about it or approving it? Come on, Hector. Where's your head? So you're telling me you're CIA? He says, yes, I am. That's why I told you, nobody can know that I'm here.
He gave you a reality check at that point.
I was sitting there with my jaw dropped on the damn table. What? He says, yeah. He says, don't you know that Camarena started investigating Caro Quintero's ranch in Veracruz? I says, yeah. That's they asked him about that in the interrogation tapes that I've heard. He said, well, yeah. He said, we, the CIA, were training Contras at that ranch. Caro Quintero loaned us that ranch so that we could train Contras there. General Petraeus, Colonel Steele, all those guys are training Contras there. What? I go, yes. And he tells me about that the reason that the CIA was secretly training Contras there was because we were not supposed to be involved in the war in Nicaragua, because U.S. Congress, through the Bolden Amendment, had prohibited the United States DIA, Department of Defense, Intelligence, the DOD, Department of Defense, the CIA, of getting involved in that war. Why? Because we had already lost the war in Vietnam, and the American public wasn't ready to get into another major war in South America. So they're waging a secret war, and they're not financing it into drugs, he told me. I said, so Caro Quintero, Felix Gallardo, and Fonseca are all working with the CIA? He said 100%. That's why. How do you think I got assigned to help them set up their radio systems and the repeaters and everything else? Who do you think set up ground to air communications at Carl Quintero's ranch so that our CIA could communicate with the planes coming in from South America loaded with cocaine and also cocaine and the weapons going south to Ilipango? And he lays out the whole thing to me. That's what's going on, dude. And that's what you're involved in. And you better be careful because they're going to kill you. I said, what? He says, yes. So then I said, what am I dealing with? Is this guy a nutcase? I mean, what am I dealing with here? Is this guy really CIA?
I mean, he didn't have a badge, credentials.
No, nothing.
To prove it.
Nothing. They don't carry them, especially when they're in foreign assignments. So I called the guy in charge of internal affairs, Office of Professional Responsibility, back in Washington, and I ran it by him. And he says to me, I think you're dealing with a 5150. I think you're dealing with a nutcase, sir. You're laughing, but that's what he said to me. And does it look crazy to you, Hector? Because, I mean, we're talking on the secret line. I mean, he hasn't met the guy or seen him.
Yeah.
And I said, he seems pretty reasonable to me. He says he's got a law degree and very well educated. And so I don't know. He said, what are you going to do with him? And I said, I don't know. I said, maybe we should polygraph him. He said, yeah, let's do that. Why don't you fly him up here and we'll put our head polygraph examiner to run polygraph exams on him to see, to test his, veracity, to see if he's telling the truth or not. So I told him, so you know what? I said, you're going to have to go to Washington and be polygraphed. He said, Hector, I don't want to do none of this stuff. If my agency finds out that I'm cooperating with you, man, he said, I want to be in a lot of trouble. He said, I'm like a double agent now. I'm informing against my own agency. And I said, yes, you are. And you're not going to go back. I'm not letting you go back. You're going to go get polygraphed up in Washington. So they did. I flew him up there with a couple of my agents out of Los Angeles, and he was polygraphed for 3 days. He came back black and blue from both arms from all the polygraphs they ran on him.
Holy shit.
And I talked to the head polygraph examiner that examined him, and he said, this guy is telling the truth. He is a CIA operative. I said, wow, what have I gotten myself into? So I'm reporting everything to Washington, and then Washington, because at the time they had the Kerry Commission investigating old man Bush and the administration for selling weapons to Iran and all this other stuff. And of course, they want to keep a lid on this stuff. So they tell me, any reports that you do on debriefing of Larry Harrison, the CIA guy, do not do it on official DEA 6s. This has got to be really secret. Do it on secret memos. Because any report that you generate that's an official report, Congress can get to. And they didn't want Congress to get to this. They didn't want the Kerry Commission back then to get to this stuff. So I started writing everything up in
secret memos.
Secret memos.
So very quickly, you watch all these shows, read all these books where they talk about the CIA and DEA working hand in hand, actually being friendly with each other.
Right.
That's all bullshit.
That's right.
It's all bullshit because Kiki Camarena was actually a sacrificial lamb and a distraction. They tortured the guy and they killed him to show that, hey, listen, the DEA and the CIA, they're working hard to find Kiki. But in essence, the CIA was fully aware and they used Kiki as a sacrificial lamb.
Right. Well, see, here's the thing. When I first came on the investigation, I was told that Kiki was killed by the drug lords because they were mad because Kiki had been instrumental in destroying the Buffalo Chihuahua ranch, which was the biggest ever billion-dollar marijuana growing operation.
Which the story was complete bullshit.
Right. That was all wrong because I was told that was motive for his death. But then my compadre, the guy that got me into DEA, Charlie Lugo, who was an agent out of Mexico City, he ran the whole operation. So when I came on the case and I was briefed in Washington that this was the motive, I called Charlie Lugo. And I said, Charlie, you ran the whole Buffalo Chihuahua raid. I said, was Kiki there? He said, no, Kiki didn't participate. Then why are they telling me that he was killed because of that? He said, I don't know. He said, but you better be careful. He said, because Kiki was not involved in the raid. That raid started in Hermosillo DEA office, and then we got involved out of the Mexico City office, and we were the ones that raided the ranch finally after 5 days of begging the Mexicans to give us enough soldiers and stuff to go in and raid it. And when we went in, we found out there was 7,000 agricultural workers there growing marijuana. 7,000 campesinos, he says, which had been recruited to work supposedly on ranches, and they got him in there. And once they got him in there into the buffalo, they became like slaves. They couldn't escape. Fortunately, one escaped, and he advised the DEA office there on what was going on, and then they reported it. The only participation that Kiki had was we couldn't get in to surveil the ranch, even close to it, because there was Mexican Army military roadblocks. We couldn't get in. So the only way we could do it was to fly over. So we called Kiki. He had an informant pilot, Alfredo Zavala. And we asked Kiki, could you use your pilot to fly over it and photograph it? Because we can't get close enough to see it. And so Kiki said, okay, use my pilot. So Zavala flew over the fields, photographed him. He flew back to Guadalajara, gave Kiki the film. Kiki had the film developed and took it to Mexico City. That was all of Kiki's participation in it. He never involved in the raids. He was never there. So Kiki had minimal, if almost nothing participation in those raids. So when I asked Charlie Lugo about it, he told me, watch out, Hector, because that's not right. He says Kiki had very little involvement in that, even though they're saying that Kiki was killed because of that. That's not true. So, but when I came on the investigation, what surprised me was when I found out that Kiki, of course, had been blindfolded and tape recorded. And I worked in Mexico, and I had been in shootouts and killed drug traffickers already over there, been involved in numerous shootouts with those cartel guys. They don't kidnap you and blindfold you and tape record you, and they just kill you. That, to me, was not a cartel operation.
Which is what I wanted to ask you. Anytime you see the cartel kidnap somebody or a hit job, right? They'll kill you in front of your family. They'll blow up your car. They'll snipe you, or they'll kidnap you. They'll film it. They'll behead you. They'll chop you up, or they'll send some sort of message, not only to you, but to your family, to your anybody that you're affiliated with, that, hey, fuck around, and this is what happens to you. With Kiki, it was a little bit different. How long was he tortured for?
2 days, or over 48 hours.
And there were stories about them skinning him. The blindfolding was off a little bit as well, because why would they blindfold him? They didn't want to see they didn't want him to see who was around. Was it CIA agent? Was it DFS agents? Who was there?
We'll get into all of that. We'll get into exactly what happened to him. I talked to 3 witnesses that were there, present. They saw who interrogated him, how he was tortured, what they asked him, what he answered, the whole thing. But at the time, remember, I'm being told that he was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by the cartel guys. And being that I worked in Mexico and had been involved in numerous shootouts with these guys, I know how they operated. They like you just stated. They wanna
take you out.
Instill fear in somebody. They'll videotape him being castrated. They'll videotape him being decapitated, cutting his fingers off, all of that, because they want to instill fear in you, and they do it. But they don't tape you and interrogate you. They just chop your head off and cut your arms off and castrate you and whatever the hell they do, skin you and whatever. And they videotape it to send it to the enemy and say, this is what happens when you mess with us. You want to mess with us? We'll decapitate you. Okay? But in this case, they didn't do none of that. They tape recorded him. They blindfolded him. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. This doesn't sound to me. I'm not saying it loudly, like a cartel operation. This must have been a Mexican government operation, I thought, because all the Mexican government is corrupt, and this has got to be DFS, Mexican government. And then I had been told that DFS had been involved, so I'm not even thinking of our CIA at the time. I'm not even thinking of anything. I'm just thinking this was a Mexican government operation to see what Kiki knew about their corruptness. This is where my head's at the time. But after talking to Larry Harrison, the CIA guy, I'm thinking, whoa, what happened here? So I double back, and that's when I went and called Charlie Lugo, who was in charge of the Buffalo operations, and I asked him, what was Kiki's participation in this? Minimal, he tells me. So then I'm thinking, wait a minute, something's strange here. So then I said, okay, I got to find somebody that was there, somebody that can tell me, like the director wanted, that could walk me through the crime, that could walk me through. He was picked up, he was blindfolded, he was taken to this room. In this room, they did this, they asked him this, and who asked him, and how he was tortured like this. Then I get Jorge Godoy, number one. And I sent an informant, and I said, "You know this guy was involved?" And he says, "Yes, he was arrested with Fonseca for Kiki's murder, and I know him, and I think I can get him to cooperate." So takes him out to a bar, gets him drunk, and he puts him on the phone with me.
Now, Jorge Godoy is a state
Jorge
police.
Godoy was the first one.
But he was state police or
He was
DFS?
state police. He was state police, and he was a sicario, and he was also a bodyguard to Fonseca and the Sinaloa cartel. That's who he was. So it was a Guadalajara cartel back then. So anyway, so he was drinking with my informant, and my informant puts him on the phone, and he says, "Here, talk to Hector." So I said, "Listen, I need you to cooperate with me." And he says, "No, I can't cooperate with you. I was involved. I was arrested for Kiki's murder." He said, "You're going to arrest me. You're trying to trick me." And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm dead serious." I says, I need you to come and tell me what happened. I want you to cooperate with me." And he goes, "No, you're going to arrest me." And I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Yes, you are." He says, "How do I know you're not going to arrest me?" And I know these guys. These guys could be the most vicious murderers, but they're religious. And I said, "Do you believe in God? Are you Catholic?" And he goes, "Yes, so am I." I said, "I swear under God that if you come up here and cooperate with me, I'm not going to arrest you." He says, "You swear on Jesus Christ, may God destroy you and your family, and you go to hell forever if you betray me." He says, "I will. I swear right now. May God destroy me. You come up here and cooperate with me, I'm not going to arrest you." He said, "Okay, I'm coming up." So I called the U.S. attorney. I said, "Look, if he doesn't cooperate, I can't arrest this guy. I cannot betray him. He's going to have to let him, even though he was involved, I'm going to have to let him go. Because if I betray this first guy, I'm never going to get another witness, because he's going to say I'm a liar, don't believe him, he'll arrest you." So I said, "Wow, Hector, you think he's going to cooperate?" And I said, "He's coming up."
But
He
how
did.
did you trust the government knowing that just very recently before that, they portrayed you as a rogue agent? How did you know that they were actually going to not arrest him? How did you trust the government at that point?
I didn't, but I took my chances. I thought, what can I do? I mean, it was either don't take the shot or take the shot. So I took the shot, and they didn't, because he did cooperate, and he told us about the different meetings that they had with the CIA, with the cartel guys, and how they had decided they were going to pick up Camarena, because the CIA basically was very much concerned that Camarena had found out about the operations, and that they were working with Joaquin Terror and stuff, and that they were going to divulge this to Congress. And by then, Congress was already starting to begin to the Jim Carrey Commission was started to investigate the Contras for being involved, also in bringing in drugs. So now we had Iran Contra going on in Congress. This was all an investigation, congressional investigation at the time. So I got him, and then I said through him, I said, "What other guys are still free that I can recruit that were there that can basically corroborate you?" Because you one witness, it's not gonna. They're gonna say he's lying, and they're gonna tear him apart. So I needed other witnesses. So then he told me about Rene Lopez, who had been in the car when they picked up Kiki. And then I sent another recruiter to recruit him. This is a year later now, and I get the second witness. And then he comes up, and of course, I start talking to him, and he starts telling me about how they picked up Kiki. He was in the car, who was in the car, what DFS agents were with him, and how they had picked up Kiki and taken him to 881 Lope de Vega, the house of Ruben Zuno, whose father had been the governor and whose sister was married to a former president, a very highly connected Mexican official, Ruben Zuno Arce. They killed him at his house, at Kiki's house. So anyway, so I started gathering all
They
this
killed
information.
Kiki at Ruben's
Right.
house.
And they took him to his house.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, first I asked Godoy, who was involved? And he said, there was a Cuban guy. I said, what's this Cuban guy's name? He said, Max Gomez. Max Gomez. I ran him through all the databases, NCIC, text, all over the place. Nothing came up. Rene, the second witness, comes up, And again, I asked him who interrogated Kiki. Well, Caro Quintero did, Fonseca did, all these guys interrogated Kiki. And there was a Cuban guy. And what was the Cuban guy's name? Max Gomez. Run Max Gomez all over. Again, nothing. It wasn't until a year later that I recruited the third guy that was there, Ramon Lira, who we all know about now. And I brought him in and I said, okay, tell me who interrogated Kiki. And he starts running me to everybody that interrogated Kiki and how they tortured him and everything else. And then he says, and there was a Cuban guy that interrogated Kiki, and his name was Ismael Felix Rodriguez. I says, who's he? He's a CIA operative. He interrogated Kiki. I said, what?
Ishmael?
Ismael Felix Rodriguez. And I said, well, they told me there was a guy by the name of Max Gomez. He said, it's the same guy. This is undercover, CIA undercover name, Max Gomez. It's the same guy, but his real name is Ismael Felix Rodriguez, and he delivered weapons and everything from Fonseca. He was involved in Operation Phoenix. He's the same guy that captured Che Guevara in Bolivia.
Ishmael is not a
Ismael.
Cuban.
Ismael. He's not Cuban. They thought. Well,
There's
he
no.
is
Ismael
Cuban.
is not a Cuban name. Ismael is Middle Eastern.
How about Rodriguez?
Rodriguez, yes, but
Felix Rodriguez was his name. Yeah, that's his real name. He's still alive.
interesting.
How did Ramon know that? How did Ramon know his real name? Because nobody else did.
Who knows me now?
How did Ramon Lira know Rodriguez's real name?
Because he was in charge of Fonseca security guard, and he had the Fonseca had told him, "Hey, this guy, respect him. He's a CIA guy," and he got to meet him, and he talked to him on numerous occasions. And he Felix Rodriguez told him that he was involved in Operation Phoenix in Vietnam, and that he had captured Che Guevara in Bolivia, South America, and that he was a very highly placed CIA guy.
So the stories about Rafael Quintero wanting to interrogate Kiki is all bullshit.
That's bullshit.
So why are there so many stories out there portraying that Rafael was the head of everything and he was the one that took Kiki's mask off and showed that, hey, listen, it was me. I was the one that did this to you. I was the one that captured you.
Not true.
So it's Max Gomez.
Gomez was the one that interrogated Kiki. And the reason they interrogated Kiki, and I have the tapes. We have the transcript. They ask him, what do you know about Caro Quintero's rights in Veracruz? And Kiki answers, all I know is that they were bringing in tons of cocaine to that ranch. A lot of cocaine was being brought in. And he says, how do you know? They ask him, how do you know this? And he says, because Comandante Loravaquio has wiretaps on Caro Quintero, and he's the one that told me to start an investigation on that ranch because tons of cocaine were coming in through there. And this is what he answers to Felix Rodriguez. Okay? So we don't know, obviously, who is interrogating because we don't have those parts of the tapes are redacted. Who's asking him the questions? And we got those tapes from our own CIA.
So the CIA was involved for protecting the drug cartel, geopolitical reasons.
They were working with them because they were using the cartels to transport weapons south to the Contras. At the same time, when they got involved with the cartels, they started bringing in cocaine to fund the war in Vietnam, and they were using Freeway Ricky Ross, and the heads of the Nicaraguan the Contras was Danilo Blandon out of here, Los Angeles, and also Edwin Menezes out of San Francisco. These are the guys that are getting the cocaine and giving it to Freeway Ricky Ross, who was selling the cocaine to the Bloods and the Crips here in Los Angeles. So I made the whole connection there. And they were getting the money. And with that money, they were funding this war, an unauthorized war by our Congress in Nicaragua. That's the way it all happened.
Jesus. Wow. But, I mean, why didn't the CIA just eliminate Kiki instead of torturing him for 2 days?
Because they wanted to know what he knew and what he might report back to Congress. That's why. They wanted to know. And he was not supposed to be killed. You don't blindfold an individual you're going to kill. That's what they blindfolded him. They wanted to waterboard him, interrogate him, and see what he knew. And they believed he knew more than what he was telling, and that's what they kept torturing until finally they killed him.
And that's what Carrillo was upset about, right? With Quintero, because he knew that by killing Kiki, things were going to get out of hand.
Well, that's what happened. As a matter of fact, Rene Lopez Romero, my witness, and Ramon Lira were left at the house with Caro Quintero, when Caro Quintero and the DFS and everybody else was investigating Kiki, when Rodriguez was interrogating Kiki, Fonseca left. And so they kept interrogating him, waterboarding him, and they were burning him. They were opening 7.62 rounds, taking the powder out, spraying the powder on his chest, and then they were lighting him up. That's when it got out of hand. The torture got out of hand, and that's when Rene and Ramon word back to Fonseca, hey, they're going to kill this guy. So Fonseca drives back to the house and says, what are you guys doing? This guy's not supposed to die. And he says, I want him. And by then, of course, Felix Rodriguez isn't there, and this is him and Caro Quintero. And he says, we got to save this guy. They're going to blame us. We're going to be the scapegoats on this murder. And he's a DEA agent. We need to get him to a hospital. That's when they called in the doctor. Dr. Machines called in. Fonseca called him in. He says, check him out. Can we save him? Dr. Machine checks him out, and he says he can only be saved if we can get him to a hospital. And he says, order an ambulance and get him to a hospital. Caro Quintero says, no, the orders are not. We can't let him go. He's gonna report us all. We can't take him and save him. And at that point, Fonseca got so mad that he slapped Caro Quintero in the face so hard that he almost knocked him down. And Caro Quintero's men jacked up rounds. Fonseca's men jacked up rounds, and there was almost a shootout between them. And Fonseca got very mad, and he says, okay, you're gonna carry this problem. This was not supposed to happen. This man was not supposed to be killed. God darn it, he's a DEA agent. We're all gonna, and the government officials, they're gonna blame us, which is what they ended up doing. They ended up, blaming them. To this day, this thing is a cover-up. Caro Quintero has already said, I had nothing to do with it. I didn't kill Camarena. It was the CIA that killed him. He's already saying it in Mexico. Everybody knows in Mexico. It's accepted in Mexico that the CIA killed Kiki Camarena. Not here. Here they say, no, it's all not true. Hector Berrellez basically set up this whole thing, and he told those informants, witnesses to lie. Now, how am I going to tell these witnesses to lie when these witnesses have testified in 3 federal proceedings where we indicted and convicted 7 people for Kiki's murder who have life terms? And I've testified before Congress, and also the witnesses have testified before Congress. For me to have basically induced those witnesses to lie is subornation of perjury. If I would have done that, don't you think I'd be locked up for doing that? Or providing false testimony not only in 3 federal courts and before U.S. Congress? I've testified before U.S. Congress on all this stuff. So that's why, they just said, oh, don't believe it. It's not true. But my question to them is, okay, if I'm lying and the witnesses are lying, why are we not in jail? If we are lying and have lied about anything, then I should be locked up for subornation of perjury, which is a very serious crime. And that's my answer to them.
They don't want to open up a can of worms.
Of course they don't want to open up a can of worms. Because if they do, and I'm hoping now that Donald Trump's coming in, maybe they will open it up. Because these guys are still running around free.
Because the case, as of even today, is considered open, right? It's an open
correct.
case.
The case it's a murder case. Remember, there's no statute of limitations for murder. It'll be open forever. And anybody that was involved, whether they were just intellectual, operatives or people that actually had their hands on, they're all guilty of murder.
Yeah, because if Rafael Quintero was the one that was involved in the murder and they know that he was the one that kidnapped and Max Gomez was involved, case should be closed. But Kiki's case being open right now tells you that there was governmental people involved in this.
Thank you. And there are 17 outstanding fugitives in that case that we indicted.
17?
17 that have not been arrested.
What happened to Larry Harrison? Where is he?
Larry Harrison, obviously, I brought him over and I made him a protective witness, and he ended up dying 2 years ago.
So when he became a protected witness, he never went to Congress or admitted to anything?
He testified before Congress.
He did testify.
Yes, he did.
And even as a CIA agent, Congress didn't take his word seriously? Or
They did, but I don't know what happened to the Kerry Commission. I mean, they never indicted these folks. That was a whole Kerry Commission, as the CIA was involved in bringing in drugs and inundating South Central Los Angeles with cocaine. They did.
What about Juan Jose Bernabe?
Okay, Juan Jose Bernabe was also a state policeman that worked with Rene Lopez and Jorge Godoy and Ramon Lira. He was also one of the sicarios and killers for the cartel, for Fonseca and the Guadalajara cartel. I made it a point to arrest him because before they kidnapped Kiki, remember they kidnapped four Jehovah Witnesses and they killed them. And the girls, before they were killed, they were raped. They were raped in front of their husbands. They were Jehovah Witnesses that were preaching religion down there. And the family kept calling me and saying, "What about our family? You're investigating Kiki's murder, but they killed our relatives too." So I promised the family that I was going to investigate the murder of the four Jehovah Witnesses, and they identified Juan Jose Bernabe Ramirez as being one of the guys that raped the women. And these women were tortured also. They ran ropes between their legs and basically made their vaginas bleed, and then they raped them after that in front of their husbands. So I had a lot of hatred for these guys that did that. And the only guy that I could arrest for that was Jose Bernardo Ramirez. And I had him brought up here under false pretenses, and I went undercover and I tape recorded him admitting to me that he had been involved in Kiki's murder and been involved in killing the four Jehovah Witnesses. And that's why I arrested Juan Jose Bernardo Ramirez.
Is he still serving?
No, they just let him go about a year ago.
How long was he serving in jail for?
I mean, he did over 30 years.
Here or in Mexico?
Here. I got him here. In
You
LA.
got him here.
I arrested him here in LA, yes.
Now, you have a book, The Last Narc.
Yes.
It's going to be a fascinating book for us to dive into and read because I'm very, very interested in diving into more as far as details about your story. But Hollywood decided to portray your story a little bit differently. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with Netflix approaching you regarding Narcos, the series?
I talked to Eric Newman from Narcos, and he wanted me to basically participate in their show. But when I saw that what they were portraying in their show was not real, I told him, I said, I got a book out where I tell the truth, and what you guys are portraying in Narcos is not what I say in my book. You guys are doing a lot of creative writing here, and it's not going to go with my book, even though I hadn't showed in my book.
Correct.
And I said, I can't participate because your story is totally different than my story. And they said, okay, fine, but can we use your name and your image and we'll pay you I think it was $50,000 or something. And I said, no. I said, no, because it's going to destroy my book. And my book is tells the truth about what really happened in the Camarena murder case. So I didn't work with them. And then, of course, I was approached by Tiller Russell, and he wanted to do the truth on it. And he was the one that did produced the Last Narc, which is now on Amazon, and that's a true story right there. And you have the witnesses there tell their story and how they participated in the kidnap, torture, murder of Kiki, and basically what they saw and who interrogated Kiki and who was involved and everything else. So that is a true documentary right there, and it goes with my book.
So what Netflix did is they actually replaced your character with somebody else.
Yes, they did.
So they created a fictional character in
Right.
a somewhat nonfiction story, but in essence, it was basically over exaggerated.
That is correct.
But how did uh, Jorge Godoy, Rene Lopez, and Ramon Lira, are their lives not in danger by participating in the Last Narc, which is now on Amazon?
Their life is in danger, yes, and they're very careful. Basically, um, in basically how they live. They don't frequent different bars or anything like that. They're very conservative in the way they live. Yeah, and they know that they could be killed anytime to this day.
Because as state police, they do not have a choice when they're selected to become, let's say, one of the narcos' bodyguards, right? Because these guys were all state police, but involuntarily, they were chosen to become their private bodyguards.
Well, let me tell you how it works in Mexico. First of all, Fonseca had credentials and the position of a comandante of the state police. So their comandante would tell these kids that were young cops, like Godoy and Rene and Ramon, you guys are going to be assigned to that comandante now, which is Fonseca. And you're going to take orders from him. Now, in Mexico, they don't just carry the credentials and the badges of commandants. They actually hold the positions. Okay? like Cochiloco and Felix Gallardo, they were comandantes of the DFS. They were real comandantes of the DFS with real DFS agents working for them. So once they were assigned to that, and it's all corrupt in Mexico, so then they think their boss is really a state police comandante in Rene's and Godoy's case. They're young guys. They're 19, 20 years old out of the academy, and they're sent over there, and they're told what to do. And then after a while, they realize we're killing people and stuff for these guys. And they're narcos. But it's too late. And they hold up positions. They don't just carry the badges. They're real comandantes of the state police. Fonseca was. And comandantes of the DFS. And that's the hardest thing that I had to do to explain to Washington is when I went to explain to them how it worked. Because they asked me in Washington, okay, Hector, you worked in Mexico. How is it that they're getting the badges and credentials of comandantes, that they carry, the narcos? And I says, you don't understand. They just don't carry the credentials and the badges. They hold the positions. They were given 30 men to work underneath them, 30 real cops. What? Yeah, it's like John Gotti being made a supervisor of the FBI and giving 30 FBI agents to work under his command. And they couldn't believe it. It's that real and that bad. I said, of course. These guys are billionaires. I said, Carlos Quintero is 23 years old and he's a billionaire already. We can trace his money to Luxembourg, Germany, and all these other countries where he had his money.
In 1980.
1980, yes.
So they're buying off all the government agents in order to get those positions.
Yes.
All right. So we talk about governmental corruption a lot on our show. We talk about tax dollars being wasted on our show. What I'm coming to understand now is you have the CIA, the DEA, all these three-letter organizations that are being funded by our tax dollars. And you have the CIA talking about the cartel, saying, you know what? Oh, you know what? We're going to go after the cartel and we're going to take them out. And we have this organization called the DEA. We're going to send the DEA out there and they're going to handle all this stuff. But at the same time, the CIA is working with the DEA. The DEA is going after the cartel, but the cartel is working with the CIA. So it's a full circle back and forth, wasting our money, making the rich become richer and the poor become poorer. So this is all corruption at its finest. And it's happening right in front of our eyes, but we're all blinded by it because we think the CIA, the FBI, and all these three-letter organizations are our heroes.
That's correct. The CIA and the DEA have never worked hand in hand. Why? Because the CIA's got one mission, and there's to protect our national security, and they do not work under the U.S. Constitution. They are not a law enforcement agency. They are an intelligence agency. Now, the DEA works under the Department of Justice, which is a law enforcement agency. So basically, you have both agencies working in foreign countries abroad, and one is doing one thing and the other agency is doing another thing. Here's the DEA trying to arrest these cartel guys and stop drugs from coming in, and the CIA is working the cartel guys, bringing drugs in to support wars and other basically other priorities. I was brought in and talked to by the CIA, and they told me, listen, Hector, we're not bad guys. We don't work under the U.S. Constitution. Understand that. We have to protect the national security of our country, and we do what we got to do because the Russians don't work under our Constitution. The Chinese don't work under our Constitution. So therefore, we cannot be bound by constitutional law. We do what we got to do in foreign countries to protect our national security. The problem is that the CIA now is involved in everything domestically too. They're all over the place, and they don't have jurisdiction inside the country. And the DEA, they're trying to do what they can do to basically curb the drugs from coming in and arrest the drug dealers, and the CIA is working with them. That's a mess.
How is that? I mean, the CIA was created to protect us from foreign countries, but yet, even when Freeway Rick Ross was on our show, as you mentioned earlier too, he was the one who brought cocaine to LA. I asked him the question. I said, "So the CIA is basically your business partner?" He said, "Yes." So how is that relevant to the duty of the CIA to be involved in drug dealings in the US? I mean, overseas, fine. Maybe you can justify it as far as, well, we're involved because we're trying to find out who's selling arms to what country, and they typically will do it through drug channels and whatnot. But you're talking about in LA, you're pretty much the head honcho of all the drug dealers as the CIA. How do you justify that?
Well, here's the problem, and I saw it with DEA. Here, the CIA is bringing in tons of cocaine, plane loads with tons of cocaine, plane loads with 20 tons of cocaine. We, the DEA, are seizing them and arresting the CIA pilots and operatives. Then we get a call from Washington to say, turn them loose. That's a CIA operation.
Oh, fuck.
And we're
Shit.
we're ordered to turn them loose from our Washington supervisors. So we turn them loose. And then they tell me, Hector Berrellez, go arrest that Mexican guy with 10 ounces so we can put him away for 30 years. I'm having trouble doing my job.
Yeah.
I'm saying, I know the CIA is selling the stuff, that they're going to sell those 20 tons of cocaine. They're going to give it to Freeway Ricky Ross so he can distribute it to the Bloods and the Cribs. But yet they want me to arrest some black guy over there selling 10 ounces. So therefore, it was a real head job on me thinking, wait a minute, I'm going to go risk my life to arrest this Blood or whatever, or Crib, and go undercover and try to seize 10 ounces from him when our CIA is providing the 20 tons to them. They're the ones distributing all the drugs, and they're distributing them to support a war. So you can see at the end of my career, I had my hard time wrapping my mind around this. I mean, how can they order me to go arrest some poor white guy or Armenian or whoever, drug dealer with 20 ounces of coke or a pound of heroin when they're bringing in tons?
So how do you continue to work for the government knowing all this? Because I'm sure you're not the only one out there, only DEA agent or FBI agent or law enforcement officer who knows this. How does one stay motivated thinking I'm fighting for the good guys when the good guys you supposedly are fighting for are the biggest bad guys in the world? How do you continue to stay committed, risk your life every day? I mean, you're retired now. At some point, obviously, that was probably one of the reasons you retired. But I would think even other DA agents or law enforcement officers learning about your story and learning about Kiki's story are going to be like, man, fuck this shit. Like, what am I risking my life for? Because it's a tough life. I mean, you're away from your family 7, 8, 9 months out of the year on top secret type of what do you call them, operations, and for what?
That's exactly where I ended up. At the end, I ended up thinking, what am I doing here? Why should I go arrest some guy for 10 ounces of heroin or coke or whatever, and he's going to end up getting 10, 15 years, destroy his life, when the people that he's getting it from are our own government? And it's no secret. I mean, the CIA had a hard time denying the fact that they inundated Los Angeles with cocaine, causing the cocaine epidemic of the 80s, where all these coke babies were being born addicted to coke. They destroyed a whole bunch of people by making them drug addicts, and they didn't care because they had another mission. That was to fight the communism in other countries. So if they had to become drug dealers to get the money to support a war that was not authorized by Congress, they figured that it was okay. And they told me, we have other priorities. We can do this. We're doing it for a bigger good, is what they told me. You understand that? You know, you're just a drug agent. We have a bigger picture. We have a bigger mission, and that's the national security of our country. We don't want communism in South America. At the same time, look at what's going on right now. Let's bring it now. I mean, the situation in Mexico has gotten worse. We destroyed the Guadalajara cartel. We got Felix Gallardo in custody. We got Fonseca arrested. We got Caro Quintero. He's still locked up right now. And we destroyed the cartel. So what happens? Other cartels sprung up. Now you have the Nueva Generación cartel. You have the Sinaloa cartel. And they're bringing in all these drugs. Our border is open.
Oh, it's still open?
A border's still open until hopefully Donald Trump gets in there Monday and starts doing something about it. All these illegals are coming in. Not only just drug dealers, terrorists are coming in. They're not vetting anybody. They just let anybody come in. And don't tell me that somebody here isn't being greased by the cartels to keep the border open. Look at all the fentanyl that's coming in.
See, this goes back to your story earlier as well. You were doing your job as a DEA agent, going in there, undercover, catching the little fish, giving him a bribe, telling him, listen, you won't serve this many years. Just introduce me to this person. You were letting the little fish go, going after the big fish, and eventually working your way up in order to catch whoever you needed to capture.
Right.
Coming back to LA, instead of going after the big fish, they're saying, hey, listen, just go grab that guy that's selling 20 ounces. Don't worry about the big fish. We'll handle the big fish. The big fish was actually the CIA.
Right.
And now, with the border completely open, we're going through a fentanyl crisis.
Right.
People are overdosing on fentanyls. In fact, there was a couple months ago, the sheriff's department pulled over a vehicle. They opened up the trunk, and just one of the sheriff's deputies got a whiff of fentanyl, passed out right in front of his partner. So more and more drugs are being pushed into America right underneath our noses, thinking that, oh, you know what? We don't have a border crisis. The wall's not going to help. What's your opinion on the wall? Do you think the wall will actually help?
The wall will help. It will not stop. Okay. It's just another way of stopping it. The wall is going to help, guys, stop all these terrorists from coming in. How do we know that the terrorists aren't burning down LA right now? We don't really know. They say, well, it was this, it was that. We think it was. We don't know. I'm suspicious of this. This is terrible what's going on right now with these fires. How do we know it's not terrorists setting it on fire and knocking down the wires or whatever? We don't know that. We are inundated right now with terrorists coming in. I'm talking about Hamas, talking about ISIS, talking about all of our enemies. The Venezuelans are our enemies. Now the Mexicans are our enemies. The Mexicans are siding with the Chinese right now. The Chinese have waged a silent war against us through fentanyl. They're killing us. Over 100,000 Americans are dying every day of fentanyl overdoses. Look at all the families that are being destroyed. You think all these people on the streets are not on drugs? They're all on drugs. All these homeless that are urinating and whatever on our streets here in Los Angeles, all of those guys are on drugs. And yet we're letting everybody come in here. I'm vetted. I think there's a conspiracy to destroy this country. And finally, the American people are waking up and saying, wait a minute, what are we doing here? Letting everybody come in, just come in. What country lets you just go into their country? None, zero. Even Mexico. You can't go to Mexico and just go in there. Mexican immigration is going to come after and say, hey, what are you doing here?
Well, you'll know this better than we will. What country borders Mexico south of Mexico?
Guatemala.
And what does the border look like between Guatemala and Mexico?
It's open, too. I mean, the Mexicans are letting them in. I mean, because they're coming here. They know they're just transited through Mexico.
So they're allowing all these people to slowly walk in through Mexico, come into the United States intentionally. This is all pre-planned. And it started to take place worse when the Biden administration came in.
Yes, absolutely.
Because one of his executive orders was to shut down the wall, stop the wall, don't build it anymore.
Exactly.
And in fact, that actually is going to cost us more money now because the cost of material, the cost of labor, everything has gone up. It's become, what is it, like times 4 now at this point? So we could have finished the wall with the Biden administration, had a security there. I know you mentioned that it's not going to fully protect it, but it's still some sort of security.
It is security.
It would have saved us money. But now he turns around and says, well, you know what? Maybe we did need that wall. And let's continue building it. Now our tax dollars will continue to fund a wall that would have been cheaper. Now it's going to cost us more money. There's already drugs flowing into the United States, gangs flowing into the United States. How many cartels were there that you mentioned? 4 or 5?
Right now, there's like 4 major cartels in Mexico.
And how many of them are here in the United States?
All of them are here.
There you go. And you guys, when will people actually wake up and realize that it's happening here and our country is being destroyed internally? The cancer is in our country. When will people begin to wake up?
When they realize that our government is corrupt also. We gotta look at ourselves. We're corrupt too. Do you think really that nobody on this side is getting any money to keep the border open by the cartels? Of course. There's corruption here. People are getting money here. The cartels in Mexico run everything. The cartels in Mexico are like the Italian mob. They're into government. They elect whatever governors are going to do their bidding. Senators, even presidents, they buy them. It's no secret that Lopez Obrador, who just left, got millions of dollars from Mayo Zambada, who is here now and cooperating. And you will see, he gave Lopez Obrador millions of dollars for his campaign and kept him in money all along. It's no secret. They're into everything. The cartels are running everything in Mexico. No government official gets elected that is not supported by the cartels. Any political enemy of the cartels in Mexico is killed. Any journalism that exposes them is killed. They kill everybody. They run everything. They run businesses over there. If you want to open up a business over there, you got to pay cartel people. Don't think that the Port Motor Company in Mexico isn't paying grab money to the cartels. They have to. They wouldn't exist. The cartels would get him out of there and eliminate him. They're on the take from everybody. That's why they have so much money. It's not just the drugs. It's not just the drugs, guys. They're into everything. Like the Italian mob was into everything.
Construction,
and cement companies and everything else. They're the same way in Mexico. You cannot open a business in Mexico without paying off a cartel guy. And if you want to open a business in Mexico and be successful, you make a deal with the cartel guys. They'll get you the license. They'll get, hey, give this guy that cement concession. Give this guy a permit to run that business. But you got to report to them. It's so bad that a friend of my uncle's, who's a doctor, he had a medical clinic. But a year ago, the cartel guys went to him and he said, sir, doctor, you got to pay money to protect your clinic here. It's going to be burnt down if you don't pay for protection. He says, I don't have any enemies. I don't need to pay anybody anything. Guess what? They burned it down that night.
You're kidding me.
I swear. They burned it down that night. And it was the same guys that were asking for the money. He had to pay 30% to them of every client that every patient he saw.
So this poor doctor didn't realize the hint that the cartel was giving him.
I don't have any enemies. I don't think I need to pay anything. I don't think nobody's threatening me.
But what the cartel was actually saying was, hey, listen, we're here to collect tax money from you.
That's exactly what they were
You
telling
pay
me.
us our money.
But that's not the way they come at you. They say, we want to protect your business.
Oh, my God.
What percentage?
And then if you say, no, I don't have any enemies, then they'll burn it down themselves. And then they come in. We told you needed to pay for protection. You pay for protection now? The guy's running his seeing clinics at his house now. He's now afraid they're going to burn down his house. So finally, he started paying him.
You have to.
They're into everything. Here's what people don't realize. The cartel guys are in our country. Over, what is it, 85,000 children have disappeared? Don't you think that the cartels are selling those kids? Let's say you want to adopt a child in the U.S. and you don't qualify because you don't have the money or whatever. They put these people that want to adopt kids legally through all kinds of hoops. You go to the cartel and say, hey, I want to adopt a child. Okay, what age do you want and what do you want the child to look like? And they'll get you one. They'll sell it to you. Oh, my son needs a replacement of a kidney. I can't get, I'm on a donors list here in the United States, and it's been 5 years and my kid is going to die if I don't get a kidney. Go to the cartel guy. They'll get a kid, take a kidney out and sell it to you.
Hector, don't tell me this,
all
bro.
All of that.
Don't
Sex
tell me
trafficking. This. And it's all here. It's not in Mexico. It's here. The cartel guys are here, guys. And they're making money hands over fist. They got their hands in everything to make illegal money. We just think here of the cartels, they're just bringing in drugs. No, they're into everything. So, they do sex trafficking. They like I said, organ or they sell organs of children. They sell kids. Where do you think this 85,000 that these children that have been brought in, nobody knows where they're at. They've all been sold. Every one of them has probably been adopted by some American family that couldn't have a kid, that couldn't qualify to legitimately adopt a kid. Go get one from the cartels. They'll bring you with any kid you want. All of that is going on in this country, not in Mexico here.
So, and that's the thing. Because the cartel are also controlling the border, right? What percentage of foreigners who want to cross the border need to go through the cartel to get to the U.S.?
Well, that's exactly. It all depends. On the way it runs over there, it all depends on what country you're coming from. If you're Chinese, you're going to have to pay them $20,000. They'll get you in. And they'll even give you a wristband to show that you paid, and they'll get the coyotes that work for them too to get you in. Now, if you're from Guatemala, they might charge you $5,000, depending on where you're coming from. And if you're a terrorist and they don't know you're a terrorist, they'll charge you $30,000. but they'll get you in. And they know they're going to come here and bomb us or whatever. They know it.
But regardless, you still have to go through them.
You have to go through the cartels. If you don't go through the cartels and you get caught trying to bring somebody across, they'll kill you. They'll capture you and kill you. If you're a woman, they'll rape you and kill you. They run it with an iron fist. What do you think they decapitate, dismember, castrate people, and they put it on videos online to show everybody you are going to come through us. This is what's going to happen to you if you don't go with us, if you go around us. And they'll show a guy getting his head cut off or a body with a decapitation having done on him. That's how they instill fear. The Mexican cartels are worse than ISIS, than Hamas, and all of the cartels. They have killed more Americans than any other terrorist organization. Look at the people they just killed from fentanyl and all the people that die from overdoses. Hundreds of thousands of people are dead. And yet we still haven't declared them terrorist organizations. We need to. We need to declare them terrorist organizations, and we need to go to the Mexican government and say, we got to eliminate them, and either you do it with us or without us. And we can't do it without declaring them terrorist organizations. Now, Donald Trump has said he's going to do it. And it's going to be a hell of a war. It's not going to be easy, guys. Don't think that we're just going to go in there and take them out in a week. These guys have launched rockets. They have surface-to-air missiles. They can blow our jets down. They can blow our helicopters down. They are better armed than the Mexican army. That's why the Mexican government cannot control them. They are better armed. They are trained by Hamas. And they are better armed than the Mexican army. They have all this artillery, very sophisticated. Launched rockets they have. Surface-to-air missiles, drones. They have all of that.
But here's how I see it. Since we know and we agree that the CIA is involved with the cartel's dealings, right? It tells me that they know exactly where all their drug farms are. Now, if our government went in, military, whoever is going to go in there, and they target where the money is, right? Hit them in the pockets, meaning just blow up all their farms. Hit them where that's the resources, that's the money that's funding everything else. Don't you think that's going to be a better method than trying to go out there and just kill every cartel member? Because there's close to 200,000 cartel members around the world. And they could be right next to you at a coffee shop and you wouldn't know it. So how are you supposed to?
I think one of the decisions that I make is become very harsh against people that sell drugs in this country that work for the cartels. For instance, if you sell meth to somebody and he dies, you can be charged with murder, and then we're not doing it. You should be charged with murder. If you sold a drug that caused a citizen's death, then you should be tried for murder. And any cartel guy that's caught bringing in lethal drugs like fentanyl should be charged and also be given the death penalty. We're too lenient on these guys. And it wouldn't take long for these drug pushers to say, "Hey, man, don't push something softer. Don't be selling the fentanyl," because the last guy that caused a death was given the death penalty or life imprisonment. That's the way you stop it. But no, what do? They pardon all these guys. Biden just pardoned a bunch of drug dealers.
But what's the benefit of killing off your customers? That's what I don't understand.
Well, the thing is that this is a Chinese thing. The Chinese want to eliminate us, and they have declared a silent war against us, and they're using the cartels. Now the cartels, they don't care. They want to make money. So whatever, if they kill you, they don't care if you die. They don't care. They just want to make money. And like I said, the cartels are into everything, not just drug dealing, everything, and they're in it here. The violence is spilled over here. Now in Mexico, there's a war going on right now between the Sinaloa cartel and the Nueva Generación cartel. And there's also now a war within the Sinaloa cartel amongst themselves. Because at this juncture, you have what? The Chapitos fighting against who? El Mayo Zambada's son, El Flaco Maya, who has taken over the Sinaloa cartel. They're warring with each other. The streets are scattered with bodies. There's shootouts every day. And what do we hear over here? And what does the news say? They don't even cover it over here. I don't know what happened to our news media, but they're compromised too. They don't cover none of this stuff. There's a serious war going on. Mexico is in real trouble. It's burning right now because of the cartel violence. And we don't hear anything about that here in our news. Why? Because the administration wants open borders. And they don't want to expose all the murders, mayhem, and everything that's going on in Mexico because it doesn't go with the current administration. I really believe that Trump is going to change all of this. We also are corrupt. We have the deep state over here. There are people that are making money off of this stuff here. We have serious corruption in this country. I'm interviewed regularly by Mexican press, and they ask me, how corrupt is Mexico? Are we a totally narco state? And I says, yes, you are. You're very corrupt. You're corrupt at the city level. You're corrupt at the state level. You're corrupt at the federal level. Your politicians are all corrupt. But guess what, folks? I tell them, the U.S. can give Mexico lessons on corruption. We're more corrupt than Mexico. Yep. And they go, what? And I said, yes. There's corruption in this country.
Yeah.
It's just the corruption in this country is at such a high level that the average person doesn't realize it. They're blind to it because we obviously have tens of trillions of dollars that circulates in our economy. So a few $100 billion here, a couple trillion missing here. People don't see it. But in a country like Mexico or even smaller countries, the corruption is more obvious because you could be walking your kids to school and you'll see a decapitated body on the street. Fortunately, here in the U.S. in LA, you don't see that. But the corruption, if you ask me, I think the U.S. is the most corrupt country in the world by far. But it's just hidden well because they control the media, they control everybody, and people are, especially now with these smartphones and all being drugged out, they're oblivious to it. As long as they can log into their TikTok and Instagram, they get careless about what's going on around them.
You look at El Salvador, which was probably one of the most dangerous countries in the world. A new president came into power and said, you know what? Enough is enough. He put his fate into God's hands and he said, we're going to take these gangs out of our country. In a matter of a couple of months, if not a year or so, all of a sudden, El Salvador became one of the safest countries in the Western Hemisphere. So a third world country like El Salvador, who doesn't do too much trade, who's very small, can completely clean its government and gangs out of its system. Yet the United States, Mexico, and a lot of these other countries that are in ties with the cartel and the mafias can't. This man proved that it's doable. Now, where are these gangs and the mafia from El Salvador?
Most of them are here.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, most of them are here. There's no crime in it. There's hardly any crime in Venezuela anymore. Nothing. One of those gangs are here.
In Venezuela.
In Venezuela, there's hardly any crime anymore. Here's the thing: what they don't realize, our enemies, the Venezuelans, the Cubans, they empty out their prisons, their insane asylums, the worst people, and they ship them over here. You think we're getting the nice people over here? You think good people, educated people even want to come to the States? They don't want to come here anymore.
No.
They don't want to come here. That's why they're trying to put the visas where people can come in that have an education like doctors that we need over here. The H-1 visas, I think they're called. Those are the visas that they should let these people in. No, we get all the criminals, all the gang members, all the insane people into our country, and these countries are sending them over here. And we're like, yeah, come on in. We're a sanctuary state. Yeah, we're a sanctuary city. What's wrong with us? And now they're going to resist Donald Trump arresting all these illegals. They're going to resist Donald Trump for trying to arrest some murderer, some rapist, some robber. Are you kidding me? Everybody should be saying, yes, let's all get together and get all these criminals out of here. Why are they resisting it? We hear say that, oh, Governor Newsom just got $50 million to resist Donald Trump. Donald Trump's immigration deportation system. Are we kidding? What's wrong with getting rid of all these criminals? We are the victims. Where is the U.S. and the state of California getting all the money to fund all these illegals? They don't come here to work. They come here to get on welfare, get a free check.
It's our tax dollars, Hector.
It's our tax dollars. That's where it's coming from. They don't care.
Let me ask you this. Mexico has a new president. First female president, Claudia Sheinbaum, right?
Right.
First Jewish president as well.
Right.
It's funny to say in a Catholic country. Is Mexico worse off now than it was prior to her being in power? Or do you think it's going to get worse in Mexico, especially with what you just mentioned, that there's multiple cartels fighting each other? Do you think she's going to actually be able to change things, or do you think it's just going to get worse?
She's corrupt. She's corrupt herself. She doesn't even mention the cartels. She's saying that she's going to resist the U.S., that she's not going to cooperate with Donald Trump as far as taking down the cartels. She doesn't badmouth the cartels because she's bought and paid for by the cartels. It is no secret. She comes from the same political party that former President Lopez Obrador left, and he was corrupt. He had numerous meetings with Mayo Zambada. Right now, Mayo Zambada is cooperating with the United States. He's meeting with Department of Justice officials, and guess what? He's giving information of former Mexican presidents that he had on the payroll, which one was Lopez Obrador. Lopez Obrador is the one that actually it's like Obama put it in Biden. I mean, Lopez Obrador actually put this woman in there, Sheinbaum. She's a non-Catholic. She's an atheist. She doesn't believe in God, but yet she walks around fakely wearing religious, ornaments and stuff because she wants the support of the people because the Mexicans are very religious, as I stated before.
Correct.
But she's not going to do anything against the cartels. She's not doing it. As a matter of fact, she's saying she's going to resist Trump.
She said she's going to actually resist Trump.
She's not going to cooperate. She says, I don't care if he threatens to impose the 25% tariffs on me. I don't care. We have the Chinese now supporting us over here too. So I don't need the United States. She said that publicly.
These politicians that have been climbing up the ladder for years are now showing us who they truly are. And it's all corruption. It's all about the money for them. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. And they don't care about anybody who's watching this right now. All they care about is how much money they can put in their pockets at the end of the day. It's sad.
It's sad, but that's the way it is. And I've spoken in numerous Mexican news channels, and they ask me, well, what's going to happen when Donald Trump comes in and he starts eliminating the cartels? Do you think that other cartels are going to spring up? And I said, cartels are like grass. You just keep mowing them down. I said, until they give up. I said, that's what we got to do. And if the Mexican government is not going to help us and let them step aside, we'll go in there and take care of them. I said, I know the cartels are very well armed, and it's not going to be easy to get rid of them. But let me tell you something. We have the greatest fighting force in the world. And I believe our SEALs and our Rangers can go in there and eliminate them. And keep doing it like grass. If they bother spring up, go in there and eliminate them too. Because the government is not going to do it. And we're going to be over here being inundated with lethal drugs. We got to stop this. Think about all the families, guys, that are suffering because they have family members that are addicted to drugs. We all have them. Look at the streets of Los Angeles. All those people, those homeless, they're all under drugs. They're all messed up. And what are we doing for them? Believe me, drug addiction is a disease. We shouldn't be arresting those people. Those people need help. We need to help those people. Where is all this money going? Do these illegals that don't give a darn? They want to come over here and live off of our government? They don't want to work? These gangsters that we're importing in? We should get the money and help ourselves. I believe in Donald Trump's priorities. America first, U.S. citizens first. Take care of ourselves first. Why are we worried about the Tren de Aragua gang and all these gangs that are coming here? Let's get rid of all these guys. Why are we supporting them? And they're coming over here and trying to do what they did in their country, like take over hotels and collect the rents. And that's what they do in their countries. And they're trying to do it here. We got to get these people out of here. We got to stop our corruption first. We are corrupt here too. Our elections are corrupted now. We know that. We know that we don't have fair elections anymore. We know that we have corrupt politicians. We need to identify them and get rid of them. And now what are they saying? Oh, Donald Trump is just going to take revenge against all of his political enemies. Well, gee, they only tried to arrest him. He had more charges than anybody that I know.
Just arrest Hector? They tried to kill the poor guy.
Well, that's what I'm going to go there. I'm saying not only did they try to charge him with more felonies than what's his name, Chapo Guzman, or more felonies that the Italian mobster, what's his name, Al Capone. Donald Trump had more felony charges filed against him, and that wasn't enough. Then they tried to kill him twice. And guess what? They're still going to try to kill this guy because he's corrupt, the dark state that he calls. They're in there still. And they made billions corrupting, by corruption. They don't want to give up that money. They don't want nobody stopping them. And I fear for Donald Trump. I really do. There's a lot of crazies out there. They've called him a Nazi. They call him anti-democratic. He's going to be a dictator. And none of that is true. But yet the media feeds on that stuff. They're telling somebody, go kill this guy. And there's plenty of crazies out there that want to make for themselves. They want to name a name for themselves and go out and kill him. And what do we get? Oh, this guy tried to kill him in Pennsylvania. This kid that was 20 years old, Crooks. And by the way, he had 3 bank accounts in foreign countries with $5 million. And I'm thinking to myself, where's the investigation gone on that? Who deposited that money in that kid's account? A 20-year-old kid? And you ask Ray, the director of the FBI, oh, I can't comment it because it's an ongoing investigation. It'll be an ongoing investigation for 30 years if nobody says, hey, we need to know who deposited that money. Who are the intellectual authors? Who put up this kid to kill Donald Trump?
The media did.
Okay.
The media did it because the media is controlled by the government. They say whatever they want to say that fits the government's narrative. We mentioned this on the podcast before in the past. When you continue to say something enough over and over and over, people begin to believe it. If the media and the Democratic Party continues to say Donald Trump is corrupt, he's anti-democratic, he's a Nazi, when you continue to call somebody a Nazi, eventually somebody's going to pick up and say, hey, this guy's really a Nazi. That's dangerous. I need to kill this man. And when I kill him, I'll be a hero. Is he a Nazi? His daughter's married to a Jewish man.
Correct.
How does none of this make sense? But it's unfortunate that people don't want to pull their heads out of their asses and understand that stop watching the news. None of this shit makes sense anymore. You want to do some research? Go online, go to these non-corrupt media sites and actually do some research yourself and understand where everybody is going with these bullshit stories as far as and I'm not being biased. Fox, CNN, MSNBC, all of them, they're all corrupt. They tell you what the government wants to tell you. And if you follow what they're saying, you're going to go into this bullshit story. And like we mentioned with your Narcos and the Hollywood stories, they're all connected with each other as well. Hollywood, the media, the government. Stop listening to them.
Here's my story. I know that what we put out in the Last Narc is true. But yet the government says, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory made up by Hector Berrellez. And Hector Berrellez basically told those witnesses what to say on the show. Don't believe it. It's not true. Okay? And I do a lot of public speaking. And I've been asked by prosecutors, U.S. prosecutors, say, "Well, Hector, we just heard you talking about the CIA. You just talk about the fact that our government is corrupt, and they say that all of that is not true." And I said, "Okay, then I got to be a crazy man to say that the CIA was involved in Kiki's murder. I got to be nuts to say that and just make it up. And if I made it up and I induced anybody to lie, that is subornation of perjury. Why am I not in jail? They can't arrest me because in a trial, all of this would come out. They don't want it to come out. It's easy to say, like you just stated, sir, it's not true. It's not true. And this is what the truth is. Don't believe it. The witnesses are still alive. Renee, Godoy, Ramon, they're all there. Why can't they bring him in and say, okay, tell us what happened? And they tell it and they say, well, we don't want to believe it. That's the answer. We don't want to believe it.
It doesn't fit their narrative.
It's not their narrative. They don't want to believe it. Okay? These people were involved and they're free and they're being treated like heroes in this country. Okay? So it's very easy to say Hector Berrellez is lying. But I say to myself, okay, if I'm lying and I'm making some very serious allegations here, extremely serious, then why am I not in jail? I've testified in 3 federal major trials on the Camarena murder case. I have testified numerous times before congressional committees on this corruption in Washington, D.C. And if I'm a big liar and it's not true, why am I not being charged? Why are the witnesses, Godoy, Renee, and then don't they charge them? And not only that, think about this, guys. Those 3 witnesses testified against 7 people that are serving life terms for Kiki's murder right now. If they're lying, then why are those people locked up? Juries believed them and convicted them. It doesn't make sense, does it? No. But like you said, the media says it's not true. Don't believe that. It's just a conspiracy theory. That's not true. The Last Narc is not true. People that watch the Last Narc believe me. And the Last Narc is being watched, by the way, all over the world. I get calls from all over the world. He says, hey, brother, man, he says, you have a lot of guts to have exposed all of that. All countries we all have corruption, but there's very few people like you that will absolutely come out and tell the truth. And like I stated, I mean, I'm here. The witnesses are here. Go do it. I hope that Donald Trump exposes the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I hope he opens a warring commission, and I hope that they really bring out the truth as to who killed John F. Kennedy, and they arrest the people that are still living, because there are still folks that were involved that have never been touched. I hope so. And at that point, I hope that somebody says, hey, look at the Camarena case too. Look at that case. The witnesses are still there. They're still there.
Unfortunately, the witnesses are relatively young too.
And they're relatively young. They're not going to be dying tomorrow.
Yeah.
But they just want to ignore it. Oh, it's not true. You just leave it alone. It's not true. And that's why I had a problem with Narcos, because they wanted to go with the media narrative that the CIA and the DEA are friendly and that they work together. And that's not true. Not true at all. And like I say, they destroy a lot of good agents like me, because after a while you say, wait a minute, how can I fight drugs? How can I be ordered to go arrest some poor lowlife with 10 ounces of coke trying to make a living over here when they're bringing in tons? I've talked to Freeway Ricky Ross. I've talked to him. I asked him, I says, were you ever ripped off of cocaine loads? You never were charged with murder. You were never violent. He says, I didn't give a darn, Hector. He says, because whatever loads of cocaine, and I lost some big ones, 300, 500 kilos I was ripped off, never paid. The CIA said, don't worry about it. They just gave me more.
Fucking hey, bro.
They
you can talk to Ricky Ross, he'll tell you that. They just gave me more dope.
Oh, my God, bro.
And then we convicted Ricky Ross of CCE, Continual Criminal Enterprise, which is a life term. And he was sentenced to life. And he's locked up for life.
Well, it was 3 life terms, wasn't it?
Was it 2 or 3? I don't remember.
I think it was 2 or 3 life terms.
3 felonies. I don't know if it was 3
so
life.
Let me go there. Let me go there. So I meet him and I talk to him and I says, Rick, I says, because he knew I was investigating him too, and he knows who I am. I said, Rick, you got life terms. How did you get out? So I became a government witness like everybody else does. And I turn in all the crooked LAPD insurance guys that were stealing drugs and money from the people that I was supplying coke. And they did. They had Operation Big Spender. The FBI went out and arrested, remember, like 17 LAPD and insurance narcs that were ripping off the drug dealers out of their cocaine and their money. And they convicted all of them. Highway Ricky Ross was the one that gave the FBI the information, in turn, that they would reduce his sentence, and now he's out. But that's how Ricky Ross got out. He was never supposed to get out. And here Ricky Ross was being provided all the cocaine by Danilo Blandón and Edwin Meneses, who were what? High-ranking Contra officials and working for the CIA. That's why he didn't care if they ripped him off. He never wanted to fight him. He lost 300 keys there, whatever, worth $1 million, $2 million. He didn't care. Because he would go tell the Blandón and them, hey, I got ripped off. He said, don't worry. How many more kilos do you need? We'll replace him. Here's 300 more kilos.
See, I feel like all this shit would even tie into Ruben's story, Palomares, who was LAPD.
Right.
And Ruben eventually became a corrupt police officer.
Right.
was arrested and served time. I feel like some of the drugs that Ruben got in his hands, along with the crew that he was with, were possibly bootleg drugs that were supposed to go to Ricky Ross or whoever it was supposed to go to, ended up there, and they go, "Oh, you know what? The CIA turns, you know what? Oh, it's gone. Don't worry about it. It's gonna sell. It'll reflow into the system. We'll get you new stuff. Don't worry about it." It's so sad what's going on, and it's all happening right underneath our noses with our tax dollars, and it's like nobody gives a shit.
Okay, I was part of a task force. I'm going back to what you were saying. I was part of a task force back in 1982, I believe it was, where we raided 14 drug locations that was being run by Danilo Blandon, the Contra official, and Edwin Menezes in L.A. We hit him all at 5 o'clock in the morning. We had over 100 FBI, DEA, sheriffs, and LAPD guys involved in that operation. Guess what? They were waiting for us with coffee and donuts.
Wow.
I swear, I'm not lying to you. They knew we were coming.
I'm actually, after this interview,
I want to laugh.
After this interview, I'm actually going to go on the CIA website, see if they have like a vendor list I could apply to. Because it's enticing. It's a great business opportunity. Why not? Maybe.
So we raided these places and they were all empty. They were waiting for us with coffee. They knew we were going to hit them. And then we raid this house in Newport Beach, and there's a guy there who'd been I forget his name right now. Ron Lister. Ron Lister was his name. Former police officer that was running drugs out of there for Menezes and them and Blandon. And he said, "You guys are going to get in another trouble for raiding us." And I said, "What do you mean we're going to get in trouble?" He says, we're CIA. This is a CIA operation.
No shit. In
and
Newport Beach.
You guys are going to be in a lot of trouble for messing with me. I said, "I don't give a damn." He had personal use crap, and I arrested him anyway. And then he called his guy by the name of Weekly, who was his CIA boss. I'm telling you, it's a mess. So that was in the 80s. And these are the people that were also supplying Freeway Ricky Ross. What happened to them? Are they in jail? Of course not. They're not arrested. It's like the same thing. These guys are operatives. They're informants. They work for the FBI, DEA, whatever. What's going on now is they now finally admitted that the FBI had 26 informants at the January 6th situation there at the Capitol. They actually have him on film telling people to go in, telling people, "Go on in and get inside and get in." And they're bringing him in, and then they're taping him and taking photos of them and giving it to the FBI so these people can be arrested later. And now all these people are doing 15-year terms. Where are the 26 informants that were in there themselves? Why were they not arrested? And Ray kept saying, the director of the FBI, "Oh, we didn't have any undercover agents there. Oh, no, we didn't. No, it wasn't us." What the difference if you're a contract employee of the FBI or the DEA or the CIA? You're still working for the agency. That's why a lot of people say, "I work for DEA." But they were not DEA hirees. They're subcontract informants, sources, contractors that we use. But they're still working for you.
Hector, hopefully all this stuff, all the corruption, everything that we've spoken about today, we're hoping that all of this comes to light and these people are actually taken down. Because only time can tell how soon we can go back to a normal life and how soon we can take back our country. The great thing about this podcast is it's being recorded. It's going to air all over social media, all over Spotify, Google Podcasts, all major platforms. And when the time comes for us to go back and listen to it, we can be like, you know what? Hector was right about this. Hector was right about that. Hector was right about this. And people can realize that, hey, listen, the media that was spewing all this bullshit was spewing bullshit. The man that was on the ground seeing what was going on and actually did his homework, his research, and understood what was truly happening was right. Guys, if you haven't seen The Last Narc, it's on Amazon Prime, correct?
Right.
Check it out. If you want to pick up Hector's book as well, we're going to put a link to the book in the body of YouTube so you guys can order the book, The Last Narc, as well. You'll help support Hector and you'll bring the truth to what's actually happening. So The Last Narc, it's on Amazon Prime, and we'll put a link to the book down in the description. Hector, we want to thank you for taking time out of your Monday to be with us, man. We
Thank
really
you so much
do
for having
appreciate
me,
it.
guys. It's been a pleasure.
And you truly are a hero. You're an
Thank
American
you so
hero.
much. Like I said, I just want corruption to be exposed and be dealt with, and we need to clean our own house first before we start cleaning everybody else's house down
for
south
sure.
or wherever.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Guys, today's podcast will be up and running on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major platforms mañana, no pun intended with the Spanish. Have a great week. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys all next week.